before the dead filled the ground, before fire turned bodies to ash, before its name became a warning whispered in Venice. Poveglia was just an island. It rested quietly in the Venetian lagoon, surrounded by still water and soft winds. From a distance, it looked harmless, green, calm, ordinary. There were no legends tied to it, no rumors, no reason to fear the shoreline. People lived here. Fishermen woke before sunrise and pushed their boats into the water. Nets were cast. Meals were shared. In Roman times, Poveglia served as a small defensive outpost. Later, it became farmland. A place people escaped to when Venice grew crowded. A place where life slowed down. Nothing about it felt cursed. And that is important. Because when horror comes to a place that was once peaceful, it leaves deeper scars. In the early 1300s, Europe began to hear whispers. They came first as rumors carried by sailors. Stories told quietly over wine. Tales of cities emptied overnight. Of bodies piling up in streets. Of sickness so violent it twisted flesh and turned skin black. Most people didn't believe them. Venice especially felt untouchable. It was wealthy, powerful, surrounded by water, protected by trade and distance. The city believed it could outrun death, but death always arrives by ship. The first incident connected to Poveglia did not involve fire. It did not involve ghosts. It involved fear. A merchant vessel arrived from the east. Some crew members were sick. One collapsed while unloading cargo. Another died before nightfall. The symptoms were unfamiliar. Fever, vomiting, swollen flesh. Word spread fast. Venice panicked. The government faced a choice: risk the city or sacrifice a few lives. They chose sacrifice. Soldiers were sent to the docks. The sick were separated. Some protested. Some begged. Some didn't understand what was happening at all. They were loaded onto boats. No doctors accompanied them. No supplies were promised. No return was discussed. They were sent to Poveglia. This was the first time the island became something else. Not a home. A destination for the unwanted. At first, people believed it was temporary. They thought treatment would follow, that doctors would arrive, that the sick would return once they recovered. But days passed, then weeks. No boats came back. Smoke was seen rising from the island. That was when people began to feel it. Not fear of disease. Fear of disappearance. The first group sent to Poveglia waited. They waited for food. They waited for medicine. They waited for answers. What they received was silence. Those who died were not buried. They were burned. Fire was believed to cleanse illness, to stop spread, to erase contamination. Large pits were dug into the ground. Bodies were stacked. Flames were lit. Some were already dead. Some were not. This was the moment Poveglia stopped being land. It became a grave. Sailors passing near the island reported strange sensations. Not sights. Feelings. They said the air felt heavy. That the water seemed stiller there. That sounds carried too far. At night, some claimed they heard voices drifting across the lagoon. Not loud screams. Soft cries, calling for help. Venice told itself it was imagination. It was easier that way. As more ships arrived carrying sickness, the system expanded. Anyone suspected of infection was sent away. Coughing? Fever? Skin irritation? Poveglia. Families were separated on the docks. Parents screamed as children were pulled from their arms. Husbands fought soldiers and were beaten down. Once you were placed on a boat headed for Poveglia, you were considered dead. Not officially, but in practice. People began avoiding the island even during daylight. Fishermen refused to dock near it. Some claimed their nets came up empty when cast nearby. Others said fish avoided the waters entirely. Birds were rarely seen landing there. Locals whispered that the island smelled wrong. Not rot, not smoke. Something deeper. something old. The fear changed Venice. People stopped touching strangers. They avoided crowds. They prayed more. They listened for bells that signaled death. And every time a ship was stopped at the docks, everyone watched one thing: where the sick were sent. When the boats turned toward Poveglia, people looked away, because watching felt like admitting the truth. The island did not fight back. It absorbed everything: bodies, ash, suffering. Layer by layer, the ground grew darker. And beneath it, thousands of voices went silent. By the time the Black Death fully took hold of Europe, Poveglia had already earned a reputation. It was not spoken of openly, but everyone knew. It was the place where hope ended, where people vanished, where the city sent death so it wouldn't have to see it. This was only the beginning. No madness yet. No experiments. No shadows. Just humans abandoning humans. And that was enough to stain the island forever. Because once a place becomes a dumping ground for fear, it never forgets. PR2. The fear did not slow the plague. It fed it. As ships continued to arrive in Venice, sickness followed them like a shadow. The docks became places of judgment. Soldiers watched for coughs. Officials searched for fevered skin. Neighbors reported neighbors. Anyone suspected was removed. And the boats kept turning toward Poveglia. At first, the quarantine was called a precaution. Then it became policy. Then it became routine. Entire ships were condemned. Crews were forced off deck at sword point. Families were separated in seconds. A mother with a healthy child was still sent away if the father coughed. No appeals. No mercy. Venice had decided something important. It would survive, even if others did not. Life on Poveglia collapsed almost immediately. The island was never meant to hold thousands of people. Buildings overflowed. Tents were erected. Sick and dying lay beside those who were still healthy. There were no doctors. Only guards who refused to enter. Food arrived late, if at all. Clean water ran out. Waste piled up. Infection spread faster inside the quarantine than it ever could have in the city. People began to realize the truth. Poveglia was not a place of healing. It was a place of waiting. Waiting to die. The fires began because they had to. Bodies stacked faster than they could be buried. Digging graves took time. Burning was faster. Large pits were dug into the ground. Dozens of bodies at a time were thrown in. Oil was poured over them. Torches were lowered. Flames rose day and night. The smoke drifted across the lagoon. Venetians could smell it from the city. They knew exactly what it was. Some accounts describe screams coming from the burning pits. People who were too weak to escape. People thrown in by mistake. People still breathing. There was no way to tell who was truly dead. Guards were ordered not to check. Checking meant exposure. Exposure meant Poveglia. Eyewitness accounts from nearby islands described nights filled with sound. Not constant screaming. Something worse. Broken cries. Choked prayers. Voices calling names across the water. Some said they heard bells ringing from the island, calls for last rites that never came. Others said the fires glowed even when no flames were visible. Venice told itself it was wind or imagination. As weeks turned into months, the island changed. The ground darkened. Ash mixed with soil. Bone fragments surfaced after rain. People sent to Poveglia stopped asking for rescue. They began asking for forgiveness. Some prayed constantly. Others went silent. Some lost their minds completely. There were reports of people walking into the fires willingly. Better to end it quickly than rot slowly. The guards began to notice strange things. Not supernatural. Human. People who should have been dead still walking. People talking to those already burned. People staring into the ground for hours, whispering. The island did something to them. Isolation stripped away hope. Fear stripped away reason. At night, guards claimed they saw movement near the pits. Figures walking where no one should be alive. They refused to investigate. No one wanted to confirm what they feared. As plague waves returned again and again, Poveglia was reused, over and over. Each wave added more bodies, more ash, more silence. Historians estimate tens of thousands died on the island. Some say more. The records are incomplete. Too many burned. Too many forgotten. By the time the plague finally receded, Poveglia was no longer an island of land. It was an island of remains. Nearly half of its soil was human ash. Every step pressed into the dead. Venice stopped using it, not out of respect. Out of fear. The island had done its job too well. Sailors avoided it. Fishermen rerouted their paths. Even soldiers refused assignments near it. People believed death lingered there, not as a ghost. As a presence, years passed. Vegetation grew wild. Buildings collapsed. Fires stopped burning. But the silence felt wrong. Too heavy, too full. Locals believed the dead had never left. They were simply quiet, waiting. This should have been the end of Poveglia's story, a mass grave abandoned to time. But humanity has a way of repeating its mistakes. And soon, Venice would return to the island, with a new purpose and a new kind of suffering. Part 3. Time passed. The fires stopped. The screams faded. The smoke no longer rose above the lagoon. Nature began to reclaim Poveglia. Grass grew through ash. Trees took root in soil made from bone. Ruined buildings sank into silence. From a distance, the island almost looked peaceful again. Almost. But peace is fragile when built on suffering. And Venice made the mistake of believing time had erased what happened there. In the late 1800s, Italy faced a different problem. Mental illness. At the time, depression, trauma, schizophrenia, and neurological disorders were poorly understood. Patients were feared. Families hid them. Society pushed them away. The solution was isolation. And once again, someone looked at Poveglia, an island already forgotten, already avoided, already soaked in death. They believed it was perfect. A mental asylum was built on the island. Officially, it was meant to help. Unofficially, it was meant to remove people from sight. Patients were sent quietly. Paperwork was filed. Families were told their loved ones would receive care. Most never saw them again. The asylum was isolated by design. Water separated it from the mainland. No curious visitors. No inspections. No witnesses. Records from the time are incomplete. Many were lost. Others were never written at all. But fragments remain. Enough to be disturbing. Patients reported hearing voices at night. Not hallucinations, shared experiences. Multiple patients claimed to hear footsteps moving through empty halls. Others claimed someone whispered their names while they slept. Nurses dismissed it as illness. At first, the treatments grew harsher. Lobotomies were performed. Experimental procedures were tried. Sedation was inconsistent. Consent was irrelevant. Screams echoed through the building at night. Some patients were restrained for days. Others locked alone in rooms with no light. Staff turnover was high. Many quit suddenly. Some refused to explain why. The head doctor lived on the island. His name has been lost, but his reputation has not. At first, he was described as strict, methodical, detached. Then something changed. He complained of nightmares, of shadows standing in the corners of his room. He said he heard voices whispering through the walls, voices speaking languages he did not understand. He blamed exhaustion. Then he blamed the patients. Then he blamed the island. Staff reported the doctor becoming erratic. He stayed awake for days. He grew paranoid. He accused patients of watching him. He claimed the dead were restless, that they were angry, that they wanted to be heard. One night, the doctor claimed the voices followed him into the bell tower. The tower overlooked the entire island. It stood above the asylum like a watchful eye. Witnesses later said they heard shouting, not from patients. From him, the story of his death is disputed. Some say he climbed the tower and jumped. Others say he fell. And some say he didn't fall at all. They say he was pushed by something no one could see. One version of the story claims he survived the fall, that he lay broken on the ground, and his staff ran toward him and watched him convulse. They claimed something unseen tightened around his throat, strangling him right there. After his death, the asylum shut down. Quickly. No investigation. No explanation. Patients were transferred elsewhere. Staff vanished. Records disappeared. The island was abandoned again. But this time, it felt different. Locals reported new sounds. Not screams. Laughter. Low. Broken. Unhuman. Fishermen passing near the island said they heard bells ringing. But the bell tower no longer had a bell. They swore they saw figures standing in the windows of the abandoned asylum. Figures that vanished when approached. The island refused to settle. It refused to rest. It was as if every soul sent there, plague victims, patients, the doctor himself, had left something behind. Not memories, not ghosts. Something heavier. By the early 1900s, Poveglia was officially abandoned. No one lived there. No one worked there. No one stayed. But the stories spread anyway. And with each retelling, the island grew darker. People began calling it cursed. Not haunted. Cursed. A place that took something from anyone who entered. A place that remembered pain and waited. This should have been the end. An island locked away by fear and history. But Poveglia was not finished, because even in modern times, people would return. And what they experienced would force Italy to make a final decision. Part 4 abandonment did not bring silence to Poveglia. It made the island louder. Not in sound, but in presence. After the asylum closed, Poveglia was left to rot. Buildings crumbled. Roofs collapsed. Nature reclaimed what it could. From a distance, it looked like time had finally erased what happened there. The people passing nearby felt otherwise. Fishermen reported that their engines stalled when they drifted too close. Compasses spun without reason. Radios filled with static. Some claimed they felt sudden nausea. Others described crushing anxiety, as if something unseen was watching them. Most turned their boats around without explanation. No one wanted to linger. By the mid-20th century, stories about Poveglia had spread far beyond Venice. Journalists wanted answers. Paranormal investigators wanted proof. Skeptics wanted to disprove the legends. People began sneaking onto the island, and many of them left shaken. One group reported hearing footsteps following them through empty halls. Another claimed doors slammed shut behind them. Some felt hands brush against their skin when no one was nearby. Photographs captured shadows where no people stood. Audio recordings picked up whispers no one remembered speaking. And nearly everyone reported the same thing, a feeling of being unwelcome. One Italian journalist attempted to spend a night on Poveglia. He brought cameras, recording equipment, lighting. He left before dawn. Later, he said only this: "There are places that do not want you there. This is one of them." He never returned. Locals refused to speak publicly about the island. Privately, they said enough. Parents warned children never to say its name. Boat captains avoided the route entirely. Even hardened sailors lowered their voices when passing nearby. The fear wasn't dramatic. It was practical. Poveglia had a reputation for taking things: peace, sleep, sanity. In 2014, the Italian government made a decision. They attempted to lease Poveglia Island. The plan was restoration, development, hotels, tourism. Millions of euros were offered. The lease was granted. And then, nothing happened. The winning developer visited the island and left. No construction began. No renovations followed. No workers stayed. The lease quietly collapsed. No official reason was given, but the message was clear. Even with profit guaranteed, no one wanted to remain. Soon after, Italy banned public access to Poveglia Island. Officially, it was deemed unsafe. The buildings were unstable, the ground contaminated, the area hazardous. Unofficially, too many incidents had occurred. Trespassers reported panic attacks, sudden illness, disorientation. Some claimed they heard voices calling their names. Others said they felt watched the entire time. Security patrols were established, warning signs posted, boats monitored. The island was closed, not preserved, contained. Today, Poveglia sits untouched. Its buildings rot beneath the sun. Trees grow wild through hospital floors. The bell tower still stands, silent, watching. The soil remains dark. Bone fragments still surface after heavy rain. Nothing grows normally there. Nothing feels settled. Historians say the hauntings are exaggeration. Psychologists say the fear is suggestion. Skeptics say suffering doesn't linger. But skeptics don't go to Poveglia, because this island was not shaped by one tragedy. It was shaped by centuries of abandonment. Plague victims burned alive. Patients tortured in isolation. Doctors driven mad. Lives erased without ceremony. The dead were never honored. They were disposed of, and some believe that matters. If places can remember, if land can absorb pain, then Poveglia has had more than enough. Venice thrives just miles away. Life continues. Tourists laugh. But beyond the canals and churches, an island waits, empty, watching, remembering. And that is why Poveglia's not just haunted. It is unfinished, because whatever still walks that island, whatever still whispers through its halls, was never given peace, and never left.